Welcome back to ACB Wrestling Talk, your main source for wrestling news and wrestling discussions. I'm, of course, your host, Alexis Carrillo, and let's get into some wrestling talk. Well, last night we got Impact Wrestling on Access TV, yet another episode where we got a few more quote-unquote underdog moments from Tessa Blanchard against OVEs. Tessa Blanchard defeated Madman Fulton by disqualification. It was in this evening. It was a pick your poison for both title contenders, both members of the title match at the Hard to Kill pay-per-view for Impact Wrestling. The rest of OVE got involved. They got involved with the match. That usually happens. Either, Tessa Blanchard usually defeats the Chris brothers one-on-one, even two-on-one handicap matches. When she faces Madman Fulton, it gets a little tougher, as it should. And if you ask me, Madman Fulton should get the win over Tessa Blanchard. They're building him up to be this kind of monster. But the rest of OVE interfered this time. After which, Ken Shamrock came out to make the save, and out came the Impact World Champion Sami Callihan to take care of the most dangerous man alive, which he did. But the most interesting thing and the most interesting element coming out of all of this is the fact that Madman Fulton would not lay off of Ken Shamrock. Not even after the Impact World Champion, the leader of OVE, and by all accounts and purposes, Madman Fulton's master, Sami Callihan, begged him to do so. So, again, adding another little twist to the OVE storyline, quite interesting if you ask me, because, again, Madman Fulton is supposed to be this uncontrollable monster, this uncontrollable guy who only Sami Callihan can keep at bay. Now it seems like that's not even the case. Why? We might get that next week. We also got Rich Swann and Willie Mack becoming #1 contenders to the Impact World Tag Team Championship, something I predicted on the last episode yesterday of ACB Wrestling Talk. And frankly, I fully expect Swann and Mack to win the titles at Hard to Kill. Currently, I don't think Swann is, much of a contender for the World Championship, although that may change. For all I know, maybe they might have Swann and Mack lose that tag team title match at Hard to Kill. And then, after Sami Callihan beats Tessa Blanchard at Hard to Kill, move on to Callihan versus Swann for the Impact World title. That's a possibility. They have history there. That could very well happen. But the way they've been booking Rich Swann so far, it seems pretty unlikely that they will keep him away from any gold pretty soon. So, again, correctly predicted that Rich Swann and Willie Mack would become the #1 contenders. Check mark for me. Another interesting match pretty much set up for Hard to Kill is Michael Elgin, who has Eddie Edwards in his sights after, laying him out last week in that triple threat match. Michael Elgin versus Eddie Edwards sounds like it could be match of the night at Hard to Kill. Even more than Callihan versus Blanchard itself. So, yeah. And who knows? Maybe Edwards gets the win over Elgin. Edwards gets to challenge for the Impact World title very, very, very soon. I've been wanting that for so much damn long because they've got so much history. But don't keep Elgin out of the title picture at all. He is unbreakable. He won the triple threat match last week. So he's clearly a top contender. He hasn't quite been getting the opportunities he's desired, but eventually he will, and they did bring him to be a main event star, so eventually he'll get to be Impact World Champion. And finally, RVD defeated Rhino in that old school rules match where Tommy Dreamer was a special guest referee. Again, I forgot that that was planned for this week's episode of Impact Wrestling, so it doesn't seem like RVD versus Rhino is going to happen at Hard to Kill. It might be RVD versus Tommy Dreamer at Hard to Kill, as seen on Impact after RVD he kicked Tommy Dreamer down after shaking his hand, so that might be a possibility. Honestly, you know, before RVD's heel turn, I was not interested in any ECW legend being a part of any match in Impact Wrestling. Now, I don't quite mind it as long as RVD gets the win over the washed up past their prime legends, in this case, Tommy Dreamer. I know the match ain't gonna be pretty, but, you know, the story is what matters. So that's what happened. That's pretty much the gist of what happened last night on Impact Wrestling on Access TV. But today is Wednesday, so we get another edition, another battle of the Wednesday Night Wars. Dynamite getting their viewership and their ratings win back over NXT last week. But I believe, I have a feeling that, you know, NXT could get their win back. Simply put, NXT does have the most anticipated triple threat main event in the past week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You know, ever since Survivor Series. We've got Tommaso Ciampa versus Finn Balor versus Keith Lee in a triple threat match to determine the #1 contender for the NXT Championship for next week's NXT episode against Adam Cole. That's right, the winner of Ciampa, Balor, and Lee will face off against Cole next week. So it's a double punch from NXT. And yeah, if I had cable, it'd be a hard pass on Dynamite, and I'd be tuning into NXT on the USA Network like that. Not only that, but we also got Mia Yim versus Dakota Kai. Who knows what will happen to Dakota Kai, if she'll finally get her ass handed to her by Mia Yim and by Rhea Ripley and by Tegan Nox, or will Shayna Baszler and the rest of her horsewomen intervene like they did last week? That's still yet to see, especially since next week we also got Shayna Baszler defending her NXT Women's Championship against Rhea Ripley. And Angel Garza faces off against Lio Rush for the Cruiserweight Championship in a match that's surely to be the opener of NXT. The match that's meant to set the tone for what NXT is set to bring on tonight's episode. And call me foolish, call me crazy, maybe Angel Garza beats Lio Rush for the Cruiserweight Championship? I don't know. I mean, you know, Lio Rush can't run through the entire division. And I wouldn't mind seeing a series of matches between Garza and Rush for the Cruiserweight title in the long run. So, Garza, Mexican Luchador, you get the Cruiserweight title win. And one last question I want to ask every single one of you is, although in this triple threat match everyone is looking towards Finn Balor or Tommaso Ciampa as the obvious winner and as the obvious future contender for Adam Cole's NXT Championship, I ask, why not Keith Lee? Why not have Adam Cole and the Undisputed Era bask in Keith Lee's glory? He has been getting over with the fans more and more. He has been getting a better response, even to the point that he was NXT's last Survivor before he got eliminated during the Survivor Series traditional 5-on-5-on-5 elimination tag team match. So again, why not have Keith Lee win this match, giving a trial run against Adam Cole? I don't think Adam Cole's losing the title anytime soon, so Keith Lee versus Adam Cole in the main event, it'd be something different. It'd save up Finn Balor or Tommaso Ciampa for a future match against Adam Cole at the takeover that's going to take place during Royal Rumble weekend. I think that might work out. But again, if it were up to me, Keith Lee would get the win tonight, and Keith Lee would be the #1 contender. What do you think? Do you think Keith Lee should win this entire match and possibly beat Cole next week on NXT? Do you think that might happen? Or are you more comfortable going with the safer choice with Tommaso Ciampa or Finn Balor? Leave your thoughts, comments, and predictions on the comments section below. Not to mention, NXT has got to go up against Dynamite, where we've got more interactions from MJF and Cody. We might get their match, we might not. We all know what MJF is capable of. And for all I know, it might be Cody versus Wardlow on tonight's episode of Dynamite on TNT. We've also got the fact that Jon Moxley has set his sights on Chris Jericho. Will we finally get the interaction we've been waiting for from Y2J and Jon Moxley? They're certainly in line to face off for the AEW World Championship very, very soon. Hopefully, for AEW's next pay-per-view, be that January, February, or March. But again, we need to start revving it up. We need to start pitting Jon Moxley against the Inner Circle right now. We need to start pitting Jon Moxley against Proud and Powerful, against Sammy Guevara, against Jake Hager. And I don't mean matches, I mean just interactions, backstage, in-ring segments, anything to get this feud, this rivalry off the ground. Not to mention that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Chris Jericho has a match planned for tonight against Jungle Boy from the Jurassic Express. I think that was defined last week when the Inner Circle and the Jurassic Express had their entire in-ring segment. That might be the case. So again, other than Chris Jericho versus Jon Moxley and Cody versus MJF, if you ask me, not much to look forward to on Dynamite. Storyline purposes, they put on great matches, no doubt about it. Kenny Omega versus Pac last week was pretty damn good. But if you ask me, if I had to pick just one, it'd be NXT. So who are you going to be watching tonight on these Wednesday Night Wars? Will you be flipping back and forth between the channels? Or are you determined to just watch one episode at a time and catch the other later with streaming or DVR? Leave your thoughts, comments, and predictions on the comment section below. Yesterday, news broke out that 2 WWE superstars broke their wellness policy. These superstars were later revealed to be first of all, one superstar that hasn't been seen on WWE television in months and months. I believe I haven't seen him in a year. And of course, I'm talking about Primo Colon, who has apparently been working for the WWEC promotion in Puerto Rico, owned by Primo's father. So, not much to say there. He hasn't been a part of any storylines. He hasn't been a part of any, I believe, any main event broadcasts or of that sort. So, with all due respect to Primo, pretty unconsequential. On the other hand, we've got one of my favorite superstars, not only in WWE, but ever since he was a part of TNA Wrestling and Impact Wrestling. Of course, I'm talking about the former It Factor, now Glorious, and now soon to be ex-Baron Corbin's servant, Robert Roode. Robert Roode, who was recently beaten down by Roman Reigns, taken out. That was apparently the way to write him out of storylines for right now. So, yeah, pretty disappointed in Robert Roode. Again, it hasn't been revealed what kind of elements were in his system that caused him to violate WWE's wellness policy. But again, Robert Roode is a star. He's proved it on NXT. He's proved it on SmackDown. He's proved it in Impact Wrestling. They should be giving him more chances instead of being, Baron Corbin's servant. And for all I know, this might be a blessing in disguise. Maybe it takes him out of the picture. They have him return as an actual single superstar after this entire wellness policy goes through the roof. But nonetheless, it's still pretty disappointing, pretty shocking, and pretty bad face for Robert Roode as of this moment for him to break WWE's wellness policy. It's not something that'll end your career. Randy Orton has violated it twice, I believe, and we all know where he's at right now. But again, it doesn't speak well for what you do inside and outside of that ring, at least to me. And for the final segment on today's episode of ACB Wrestling Talk, Booker T gave The Rock some props on his promos. And of course, The Rock responded, but this all came about after, I believe, The Rock named his Mount Rushmore, and then Booker T called him out and saying that he was the absolute best to be on that mic. This is what Booker T had to say about The Rock's promos on his podcast, The Hall of Fame with Booker T. And I quote, "There have been so many great promos. The Rock was the best promo guy that ever did it because he really knew how to capture the moment. And when I say to capture the moment, I mean he talked about the local area where we were, the stadium where he went to eat. He took you on a story. When you do it like that, you're just standing in awe, man. There will never be any better. Guys like The Rock were good at what they did. I don't think there will ever be any better because those guys, they ad-libbed a lot of stuff. But also back then we had a great writer by the name of Brian Gurwitz that worked with us, and I tell you, he was such a different dude. You watched him on the outside looking in and you would think, get this guy out of here. But then, he was the smartest guy in the room. He had so many ideas in his head, and I don't know where it came from, but that guy worked with The Rock and myself so many times as King Booker, and he really made that character come to life. He made it special. I couldn't have done King Booker without Gurwitz coaching me, writing for me, and showing me the routes to take with that character each and every night. And of course, The Rock responded to all of this praise, and the fact that Booker T, the WWE Hall of Famer, pretty much called him the best of the best in terms of promos, and he tweeted out a response to Booker T, tagging Booker T. This is what he had to say, and I quote, "Thank you, brother, for this high praise. Booker T will always be the best pure athlete performer I've ever had the honor of sharing the wrestling ring with. His athleticism, in-ring timing, and intensity was unmatched. It's why he's a WWE Hall of Famer." That's, of course, what The Rock tweeted. And after all of that, if you ask me, this might be controversial. This might just be piggybacking off of what Booker T said. But whenever I want to get excited about wrestling or WWE in general, whenever I want a promo that will just make me laugh, that'll keep me entertained, that'll tell me exactly the story that is going on at that very moment, I just go to my smart TV, open the YouTube app, start searching WWF The Rock 2000 segment, and just hit play on any of those in-ring segments where The Rock had a mic, and just watch, like Booker T said, in awe, and just be entertained and just be riled up, pumped up from The Rock's adrenaline that's feeding the audience, and the audience is feeding The Rock. Again, if you ask me, The Rock in 2000, he was in his prime, both in ring and on mic, and on the mic. So again, again, very much controversial what I'm just about to say. But if you ask me, this is just my opinion. It's just one guy's opinion. Again, the best guy on the mic, the best man to deliver promos, the most electrifying man in sports entertainment, The Rock in 2000. He was in his prime. Even when he came back in 2011, 2012, 2013, he was entertaining. He was The Rock. But he never, ever reached the pinnacle as much as he did back in 2000. Way back in that year was the best year to watch The Rock do his thing. And unfortunately, it was The Rock's last full-time year, I believe, because he then went on to become the movie star that we know now and the most busiest man in Hollywood today. So with that said, that's been it for today's episode of ACB Wrestling Talk. If you like this video, if you like this episode, hit the like button. If you dislike this episode, hit the dislike button. That's it for me. See you tomorrow.